Have you ever woken up with the feeling that you just can't go on? Like every thought weighs a ton, and the simple act of existing feels like a burden. That silent, constant ache has a name, and Arthur Schopenhauer dedicated his life to understanding it. In this video, we dive into the philosophy of pessimism, not to sink deeper into despair, but to find, within the darkness, a truth most people are too afraid to face. While the world screams for happiness, maybe all you want is to breathe without that crushing weight pressing down on your chest. Through Schopenhauer's piercing gaze, we'll explore why life feels so unbearably heavy, why the mental exhaustion never seems to fade, and why so many live on the edge of an invisible breakdown. Stay until the end, because maybe, just maybe, the pain you feel isn't weakness. It might be the clearest sign that you're seeing the world exactly as it is. Before he became the face of philosophical pessimism, Arthur Schopenhauer was just a child, surrounded by silence and sorrow. He grew up in a home where melancholy was more common than smiles, a cold, bitter father, a brilliant but distant mother. From an early age, he learned that love wasn't promised, joy was fragile, and pain was the only thing that seemed to stay. That childhood marked the beginning of a solitary journey, to understand the suffering no one wanted to talk about. At 17, Schopenhauer lost his father, officially to suicide. The impact was devastating, but unlike most, he didn't run from the pain. He looked straight into it, as if staring into a mirror. Instead of seeking distractions, he dove deep into books, into the human soul's abysses, into the void between life's promises and its brutal reality. And that's when he began to see, maybe suffering isn't the exception, maybe it's the rule. While other philosophers of his time were preaching reason, progress, and happiness, Schopenhauer pushed back with one haunting question. If all of this is true, then why are we still so unhappy? He looked at the world and saw masks, people pretending to find meaning in lives filled with repetition and frustration. Most philosophical systems to him were nothing more than delicate lies, comforts built to hide an unbearable truth. Out of that tension, his philosophy of disillusionment was born. Schopenhauer worked in near-total isolation. He had no followers, no praise, few even read him. His view of life was too dark for a world still drunk on Enlightenment dreams. He famously wrote, "Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom." Harsh words, but uncannily familiar to anyone who's ever felt the sheer weight of being alive. It was as if he was voicing what so many of us feel, but can't quite put into words. What made him truly unique wasn't his pessimism, it was his honesty. He didn't sell cheap hope. He said, yes, life is heavy, but naming that weight is the first step to carrying it with dignity. His view wasn't destructive, it was liberating. Instead of fighting against suffering, Schopenhauer invites us to accept it as part of existence. And from that acceptance, perhaps we can find a strange kind of peace. That's why so many young people find him in their darkest moments. Because, unlike those who say it'll get better, Schopenhauer looks you in the eye and says, I know what you're feeling. And no, you're not crazy for feeling this way. His philosophy doesn't try to erase the pain. It gives it a name, a structure, a meaning. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first step towards surviving life, without pretending it's light. When Schopenhauer wrote that life is essentially suffering, he wasn't being dramatic, he was being honest. To him, to live is to desire, and every desire begins with a lack. That lack is a constant hole inside us, a restless impulse that never fully goes away. Even when we get what we want, a new emptiness soon follows, a new craving. The cycle repeats endlessly, turning life into a machine of dissatisfaction. At the core of this He saw a hidden force he called the will, a blind, irrational drive that moves us without asking for permission. The will doesn't care if you're ready, it just pushes. And the more we obey it, the more we become slaves to something that's never satisfied. That's where the pain comes from. We're carried by this force like leaves in the wind, and even when we stop, we're too tired to feel relief. This is key. Schopenhauer didn't see suffering as an accident. He saw it as the natural state of existence. Pleasure, he said, is brief, fragile, just a pause between two waves of pain. He wrote, "Pain is positive, pleasure is merely the temporary absence of pain." It's a brutal truth, but one that brings a strange kind of clarity. Because once we stop chasing false promises of salvation, we start seeing the world with open eyes. That's why so many people feel exhausted, even without facing major tragedies. Modern life doesn't quiet the will, it speeds it up. More goals, more screens, more expectations, less time to breathe. We live numb, overstimulated. But underneath it all, the pain of being still pulses, especially in the silence of 3 a.m. Schopenhauer saw that emptiness long before we did, and he named it with a coldness that somehow feels like freedom. Most people make the mistake of thinking something is wrong with them for feeling this way. They think it's weakness, failure, or a lack of gratitude. But as Schopenhauer shows us, this pain isn't a flaw, it's woven into the fabric of life itself. We're not broken, we're just awake. And that awareness, harsh as it is, might be the beginning of a new kind of strength. The kind that grows from truth. And here's where everything shifts. If life is suffering, what do we do with that pain? Do we run from it, deny it, or do we learn to turn it into clarity, into resilience? Schopenhauer doesn't offer easy comfort, but he plants a seed of awareness. And maybe, just maybe, that awareness is the first step toward carrying the weight of life without letting it crush us from the inside. Have you ever noticed how moments of pleasure slip through your fingers? That sudden rush of joy, the relief after an achievement, or a smile that appears out of nowhere. It's all gone too quickly. Schopenhauer warns us, this isn't an accident. It's the structure of existence itself. Pleasure, no matter how intense, is always fleeting, like a short breath between long stretches of anxiety. Life at its core is made of waiting, frustration, and longing. Pleasure is just the pause. According to Schopenhauer, this happens because pleasure has no roots. It's not solid in itself. It's merely the temporary absence of pain. Pain crashes into us with weight and presence, while pleasure is light, almost illusory. It vanishes the moment we touch it, leaving behind a fresh emptiness. That's the tragedy of life. The more we chase pleasure as salvation, the more dependent and disappointed we become. It's a cruel and silent cycle. Modern society sells us the idea that happiness is not only achievable, but mandatory. Be happy, they say. Smile more. But Schopenhauer exposes the lie with a simple question. If happiness were natural, why do we have to keep convincing ourselves of it? What he reveals is a culture that desperately tries to cover its inner emptiness with consumption, distractions, and hollow motivational slogans. This frantic search for pleasure, the trips, the wins, the possessions, the validation, it's the perfect trap of the will. Every time we tell ourselves this time it'll be different, we surrender to another cycle of illusion. And when the high fades, we end up right where we started, only more tired. That's the root of the chronic mental exhaustion so many people feel without knowing why. It's not laziness, it's the fatigue of existence. Most people make this mistake. They believe something's wrong with them for not being happy all the time. But really, the problem is in how we were taught to see life. Schopenhauer invites us to a more honest view. We don't chase pleasure because it's so great. We chase it because we're trying to escape pain. That's the heart of modern nihilism. we slowly realize pleasure can't save us, and we drift, not knowing what to seek anymore. But what if that recurring pain isn't a glitch in the system? What if it is the system? And what if understanding that is the first step toward escaping the invisible prison of the ideal life? Schopenhauer's thinking pushes us into uncomfortable territory, but that's where freedom lives, because only when we stop chasing the illusion of lasting happiness can we maybe, just maybe, find something deeper, the quiet peace that comes from facing the truth. We live in a time where everything promises to fill us up. Social media, success hacks, bite-sized self-help. But the more we try to feel whole, the more hollow we become. Schopenhauer would have seen it clearly. The modern mistake is trying to drown out pain with noise. We're taught to keep moving, not to get somewhere, but to avoid hearing what's inside. This constant motion is the new kind of suffering, a quiet escape dressed up as ambition. We're flooded with goals, comparisons, endless stimulation, and still we wake up tired. Not from doing too much, but from being. The will keeps grinding, always asking for more, never letting us rest. And the more we reach outward, the further we drift from who we truly are. What's left? Emotional overload and a screaming silence no one talks about. Most people get this wrong. They think if they just follow all the rules, the emptiness will disappear. But Schopenhauer would say that emptiness isn't a mistake. It's a signpost pointing back to the truth. It shows up when we realize that nothing out there is ever enough. And that moment can break you or open your eyes. Because the real problem isn't a lack of stimulation, it's a lack of meaning. We're drowning in content, but starving for something that actually matters. And this is where Schopenhauer's vision gets radical. He believed the only way to escape the tyranny of the will was to let go of desire. Not to abandon life, but to calm the storm inside. Art, reflection, compassion. These weren't escapes to him. They were resistance. They were how we pause the cycle, even for a moment, not to escape reality, but to return to what's real. How many times have you asked yourself, why does it all feel so meaningless? Why do I feel alone even in a crowd? Why does every win fade so fast? Those questions aren't weakness, they're awareness. And Schopenhauer believed only a few ever get that far. Most people stay numb, trapped in loops, never daring to look inward. But those who do are already beginning to wake up. And maybe that's why you're here, right now, watching this video. Because something in you already knows. The modern world isn't giving you real answers. And somehow, the bleak thoughts of a lonely philosopher from 2 centuries ago hit harder than every self-help book on your shelf. The modern mistake is running from the void. The healing, if there's any, might start when you stop running. And finally, listen to what the silence is trying to say. What we often call mental fatigue is something far deeper than just being tired. It's not just a lack of rest, it's the invisible weight we carry every single day. It's what happens when you're constantly trying to seem okay, while quietly falling apart inside. It's waking up with a soul that's already exhausted before your body even leaves the bed. It's a pain without a clear cause, a sadness without a story, a weight with no name. But it crushes your chest like concrete. Schopenhauer never called this weakness. He called it lucidity. To him, life isn't light, and pretending it is only makes it heavier. Suffering isn't a flaw in the system, it is the system. And that truth, as brutal as it sounds, offers unexpected comfort to those who suffer in silence. Because suddenly you realize you're not broken, you're awake. And that awareness, it can save you from the guilt the world places on those who feel too much. Most people live in a state of quiet resistance, pushing pain down, hoping it'll just go away. But it doesn't go away. It shapeshifts into anxiety, insomnia, existential fatigue, and that leads to a new kind of pain, the pain of looking fine, while everything inside is one breath away from collapse. That's what emotional overload looks like. It doesn't bleed, it doesn't scream, it just weighs. And Schopenhauer knew this. That's why he never promised happiness. He offered clarity. He believed that only those who look at suffering with honesty can begin to lighten it. It's not about erasing pain, but letting it exist, without fear, without shame, without the need to hide. And little by little, that changes everything, because when you stop fighting pain, it stops owning you, and that, dark as it may sound, is a rare kind of freedom. Have you ever wanted to give up without even knowing what you were giving up on? Ever cried in silence, feeling like something's wrong with you because you don't seem to fit in? Ever just wanted to disappear? Not forever, just long enough to rest from the pressure of being alive. If so, this chapter is about you, and Schopenhauer would be right there beside you saying, you feel this way because you see the world for what it truly is. Don't give up. You're not broken, you've simply awakened. And that's where his philosophy becomes unbearable to some and irreplaceable to others. Because he didn't offer promises, he offered a mirror. And in that mirror we see what no one taught us to see. That the pain we carry isn't weakness, it's existence, raw, unfiltered. And by accepting it, we might just find the only kind of strength that truly matters. The kind that's born from the recognition of our own truth. Most people believe that the meaning of life lies beyond pain, that we need to overcome it before we can truly start living. But Schopenhauer offers something far more radical. What if the meaning of life is hidden inside the pain itself, not as punishment, but as revelation? According to him, pain is the one thing that pulls us out of distraction and forces us to face what really matters. It's a portal, one that few have the courage to step through. Unlike what modern culture tells us, pain isn't something we must avoid at all costs. When we face it honestly, it strips away our illusions. It shows us what we cling to, what we fear, what we hide. That's why so many fall apart even when everything seems fine, because the emptiness remains. Schopenhauer believed that in that moment, we're offered a choice: to collapse into despair or to use that pain as a key, a doorway into a new kind of awareness. He believed our most painful moments are often the most real, because they free us from what's false, from naive idealism, from ego-driven dreams, from the lies we've been told about success and control and wholeness. Pain shatters the illusion, and in the wreckage, we start to see something that was always there, our ability to endure without having to conquer. Pain then stops being a private burden. It becomes a sign, a call to live differently. Less about achieving, more about being present, less about euphoria, more about clarity. This is Schopenhauer's most powerful idea. Don't run from suffering. Transform it. Turn it into wisdom. Let it be a mirror, a compass, a foundation. Let your own pain teach you how to live more clearly, more consciously. Have you ever considered that your deepest pain might be trying to tell you something? That behind the weariness, the loneliness, the heaviness of being, there might be a message you haven't listened to yet? What if, instead of fighting it, you just stopped and listened? Pain speaks, and when we begin to understand it, we stop being its victim. We start to work with it, to shape it into something greater, self-understanding, and that changes everything. Life won't stop hurting, but it can start to make sense. And this is where Schopenhauer's philosophy becomes more than just an idea. It becomes a survival guide, a new way to walk through the ruins of existence, not by denying the darkness, but by using it as a path. Because sometimes it's only when the pain tightens its grip that we finally stop running and begin, for the first time, to truly live. You've made it this far because you've been carrying a weight you couldn't quite name. And now, maybe you've realized that weight has a story. It has shape. It has roots. Schopenhauer didn't take the pain out of the world. He did something even more powerful. He showed us that pain means something, that the quiet sadness, the mental fatigue, the hollow feeling inside, they're not signs of failure. They're signs of awareness. Life will still be hard. But now you know, you're not alone in your suffering. There is a way forward, not to erase the pain, but to walk with it. And on that path, philosophy isn't a luxury. It's survival. It's resistance. It's the thread that keeps us standing when everything else tries to pull us under. So now I ask you, what part of your pain have you never told anyone? Drop it in the comments. This is a space for those who are tired of pretending everything's light. If this video spoke to something in you, share it with someone who's still stuck in the dark. Maybe they need to hear this too. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This is where we talk about the things the world tries to hide. Because sometimes, just understanding the pain is enough to finally breathe again.